actually apply the changes that they really believe are necessary. It's because SK Telecom can put in the new department labeled New Communications and make sure people know about iPads and iPhones and how that links to telecommunication. Because these people can actually come back to their company and make Korea more competitive in the global market. That's why there's an incentive for people, for corporations to invest millions and billions of dollars into universities, because these people can actually help them later on. And ladies and gentlemen, so in the end, what's better for the kids? Greater accessibility, better quality of education? We told you that it's opposition. What about what's good for society? Poor kids can go to school, social mobility, more efficient usage of our resources, less unemployment. Educators can have less need to suffer from economic problems. We strongly believe that in so many aspects, the opposition takes the lead. Thank you.
Speaker spoke for 8 minutes and 32 seconds. All right, I'd like to thank the opposition whip for his speech, and I'd now like to close the opposition side by opening the floor up to the reply speaker.
One thing I truly fail to understand about this debate is a wavering stance on the government side. They talk about corporate greed, how they're monsters, how they're going to contaminate research and universities. Then they talk about how philanthropic they are with anonymous donations. They talk about these vocational schools and how that's wonderful. All of these other things that are funded by the same corporations. So I don't know if asserting that kind of influence makes them angels, but deciding to own a university suddenly makes them demons. So, just to get on the more personal side, I'm very staunchly liberal. I'm the last one to endorse corporations. I know how Samsung treats its employees, how it's corrupted, but I believe that these companies can offer something good for society, for students especially. Well, my chemistry teacher studied at Postdoc. One of my cousins studied at Sungkyunkwan. I never saw anyone of them complaining. Actually, they were very happy because they received scholarships, because they got to use better facilities, because they were afforded with a better chance at a higher quality of education. What I see here is that I have faith in our society. Not complete and utter faith that corporations will be angels and do everything perfectly, but I have faith in universities, the students within those universities that are smart and passionate, and the society and the media. And we believe that the catastrophic situations that the government side so eagerly portrays is overblown. What we see here is that the government side often shirks its responsibilities. They have shirked their responsibilities on the debate. They have the burden to prove that the status quo is somehow very flawed, that the status quo of letting universities be owned by corporations is very flawed, that we should take that choice away, that freedom away from students, companies, society, universities. What I think is the government side threw out a few examples about corporate greed that ignored what corporate ownership of universities did good, saying that there could be other measures around. We think that this is insufficient for any government side to win a debate. We think that they are shirking their responsibility by choosing not to respond to the good side of the motion by saying that, well, it could be done in other ways, and saying that bad things that exist in policies that they recommend as an example of corporate greed. Ultimately, what the opposition has to trying to show you today is things that are existent in the status quo. Corporations that have no problems with owning universities, not contaminating society and their students with false information, not spewing out contaminated research by every minute, but something that offers a better quality of education, something that makes education more accessible, something that makes society waste less time and resources. And if the government side comes up and says, well, that's great, we can get around it, education is precious, of course we're allowing corporations to help in other ways, only ownership is bad, we think that the government side has a very large contradiction in depicting corporations as both angels and demons.
Please, speakers took 4 minutes and 26 seconds. All right, I'd like to close this debate by giving the floor to the government reply speaker.
As a quick reply to the opposition reply, he accused us of saying that our case evolved, that we depict corporations as both angels and demons. But ladies and gentlemen, we must say that that is the change we want to bring in our policy. We prevent the demon side of the corporations, their evil greed and lust for research. But then we still protect the angelic side of corporations. They have a lot of money. We're still letting them fund, and that is why our policy is exactly effective. As a government reply, I'll be summarizing the premise, principle, and practice of this debate. First, for premise, team opposition was a team full of fundamental assumptions without even listening to our own case. They don't have a single speaker left, and they still haven't responded to our second substantive point about financial insolvency. Now, let's examine the major examples of each side. Now, our side mentioned Hana High School and how many students dropped out because of corporate greed. Their only response was this was a very amateur decision in the ocean already full of schools. Well, we say that this amateur decision was made by a corporate, and many corporates are incentivized to make that decision because we told you in our deputy speech that once we let this trend continue, it will evolve and more countries will be making irresponsible amateur decisions in this already flooded pool of many schools. Now, to our Coca-Cola example, they didn't respond and only said that this debate is about corporate funds, not about corporate ownership. But ladies and gentlemen, we ask you to look at the motion of this debate, which is about this House ban corporates from owning universities, not from funding universities. Their major example was Seonggyungan, and we've already told you, all 3 speakers, that the benefits that Seonggyungan University has about internship, about job opportunities, can still be protected under our policy. Now then the opposition whip suddenly came up and started making new examples about Yonsei University, which is highly unfair, ladies and gentlemen, but we can still rebut to that because all the benefits of the universities they've mentioned can still be protected under our policy. Now, team government was also a team full of fundamental contradictions. Their leader told us that corporations' interests coincide with the universities, and their leader of opposition said the universities have the best interest for education. Then their deputy comes here and says corporations mostly is in it for the money. To quote him exactly, he said they want research in their own interest. A contradicting case cannot survive, ladies and gentlemen. They cannot ban their stance whenever to their whim, and we think this is, again, highly unfair. Secondly, to talk about principle, the opposition never gave us a value that they supported. But according to all their 3 arguments, they support money. Okay, we don't dissupport that. We say that money, it could also go to our side because our policy says that funding is still allowed. But on the contrary, side proposition, we have a value. But why is that value important? We value the integrity of education because that is what the universities should stand for. Not for the money, but for the integrity of education and the cleanliness and untaintedness of research programs. The third thing to talk about premise, well, we gave you a clear 4-step policy that protects the benefits of corporate involvement. But the harms of corporate involvement can be prevented. Because we ask who is best to own and run universities, corporates or educational experts. But again, who is best to fund these universities? And that will be corporates, and that is what is going to be done in a policy. They only address two responses to our policy. Number one, what about funding? Well, we still have that. We're not going to ban it. How many times do you have to tell you? Number two, what about the internships at job? Well, just because you came out of a university owned by a certain company does not mean that you automatically get hired by the company. And the only thing they say is about the checks and balances system, but this is again a very wishy-washy stance on team opposition, and an unfair one because they keep saying that, okay, we can't help the corporates from exerting their pressure, so just let them. And if checks and balances system work out fine, why do we have universities like Stanford that had a corrupt research study? For the last time, all the arguments that about the wonderful benefits of corporates funding that they've mentioned also falls into our policy. But all the harms that we've told you about corporate ownership that we've mentioned in all three speakers also can be prevented under our policy. And that is why we clearly take this case home. Thank you.
Heard